Our next speaker is Professor Michael McFaul. Michael McFaul is the director of the Friedman Spogli Institute for International Studies. He's also a professor in the Department of Political Science. Professor McFaul was a great supporter of Ukraine since the day of the invasion, and we are very happy to have you here. Thank you, Professor.
So, I talk louder than everybody else, I can tell. So, thanks for having me. I'm actually not happy to be here. I don't think any of us are happy to be here. I can't believe we have to acknowledge this anniversary for the third year in a row. And I want to say three things to people that are from Ukraine or have family in Ukraine, and one thing to our Americans who are here. First, to those from Ukraine who have relatives in Ukraine who are enduring this barbaric war every day, every night, who have lost loved ones to this horrific imperial dictator that is threatening not just Ukraine, but the entire free part of Europe. I just want to say thank you on behalf of all people who believe in freedom. Thank you for your sacrifice. Second, to the Ukrainians that are here and people connected to Ukraine, as an American who really loves my country, by the way, I want to apologize for my president. I find this to be shameful, what he is doing, and I am deeply embarrassed as an American citizen for the things that he has said about your country, for the wrong things he has said about your president. And I feel really embarrassed by that, and I want to apologize to all Ukrainians for those comments. Third point, again, to Ukrainians. I want you to know that President Trump does not speak for all Americans.
Yes.
He is on the wrong side of history on this. He is on the wrong side of his own base. 81% of Americans, think about that for a minute. How many polls do we have where 80% agree to something? That does not happen in our polarized America today. And yet 81% of the American people do not trust Putin. Only 9% do. Trump is not with the American people on this issue today. And that gives me hope. And now my last comment is for the Americans. Well, for Ukrainians too, but this is really to Americans. This is a hard, horrible day. I have hundreds of messages from friends, by the way, and former students, people that have spoke here from all parts of Ukraine today. And my message was one of sorrow. My message was one of apology. And all of them were much more optimistic than I was. And they were saying, Mike, keep fighting. We are fighting. We are not done. And I think that's the biggest mythology that was talked about. Yes, there's so many crazy myths and disinformation, and I'm on TV. I'll be on TV tonight arguing about them again. Yes, it is a fact that Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago. We can't argue about that. You don't get to have opinions about facts. We have to do that. We have to keep fighting this disinformation. But the biggest thing we have to fight in my interactions with the Trump administration officials and other naysayers is this notion that Ukraine is losing and is a hopeless cause. I want to remind you, I listened very closely to President Putin's speech the 2 days before the 71-minute speech that he gave before he invaded your country. And he was very blunt. I used to interact with the guy. He's very clear. He's not messing. He's not trying to camouflage what he's seeking. He was very clear what he sought in invading Ukraine. Let's review the facts. First, Ukrainians know this, but the Americans might not know this. Putin doesn't think that Ukraine's a real country. And to the Ukrainians in the audience, he doesn't think you're Ukrainian. He thinks you're just Russians with accents. I've heard him say that about you. So he thought, by just using a little shock and awe, that he would be able to take over and unite the Slavic people. You defeated him. That has not happened. Ukraine today, in terms of an identity as a nation, is stronger than ever before. Number two, he said he was invading to denazify Ukraine. And by that he meant he sought to overthrow the democratically elected president of Ukraine, and not just overthrow it, he wanted to kill it. I know President Zelensky, I've talked about this before, when the history is written, we will know how close they became to achieving that objective, but they have not achieved that objective. President Zelensky is still the president of Ukraine. The Rada is still functioning. Denazification, if that was a goal, has not been achieved. Number two. Number three, demilitarization, he said that, has not achieved that goal. Number four, as was already expressed, he's not just interested in taking parts of Ukraine. He wants to go in the Russian history books as taking all of Ukraine. And he has not achieved that objective. And in fact, last year was the lowest amount of territory that they have achieved. Now, I'm not saying that Ukraine has the military might to liberate the country to the 1991 borders, but this notion expressed just by our vice president yesterday that Putin has all the firepower to march all the way to Kiev and take the rest of the country is simply not true. He has not achieved any of his objectives, and we need to educate the American people about that so that we can stop this absurd idea of pivoting to Putin and abandoning Ukraine, because we know from opinion polls that that is not true. And now we have to mobilize our country to reverse that cause, because if President Trump begins to fall in the polls, that gives us an opportunity to stop this horrific pivot and to get back to supporting the Ukrainian people. But I want to leave you with a positive message in my phone right here, from very senior government officials to just friends on the front line fighting. They're not stopping fighting. They know what's at stake. We have to fight with them too. Slava Ukraini!